Hi, I'm Christina, and today I'm going to be doing the challenge, Have I read a book published in every year of my life? So I saw Chloe do this recently over at Chloe Reads Books, and she got the idea originally from Kayla over at Books and Lala, and I thought it looked like so much fun that I wanted to do it too. So I will of course link both of their channels down below so you can go and check them out. They're two brilliant booktubers, so if you haven't already followed them, go and have a look. So let's get straight into it. So for the more recent years, I have obviously read quite a lot of books in those years, and the further towards the year of my birth, I've read a lot less. So for the most recent years, I'm going to be talking about books that are some of my all-time favourites, and then the further back in time we get, they're not going to be so much favourites rather than have I read a book published in that year. So I have been through Goodreads and I have made a list of all of the books published in all of the years of my life. So let's just dive straight into it. So starting with 2023, one of the books I've absolutely loved that was published this year is Cursed Bread by Sophie Mackintosh. So this one was longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction this year, and I wouldn't even have heard of it if it wasn't for that prize. And it was really good, I really enjoyed it. So moving back towards 2022, now this was a really difficult one to choose. There are so many brilliant books that I've read that were published in 2022. I've got so many 5-star reads for books published in that year. So one of which is Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. I absolutely love that book. It's such a wonderful exploration of time. And one of the other books that I also really enjoyed was Our Wives Under the Sea. It was so good. Such a brilliant exploration of grief. So moving back to 2021, I have Assembly by Natasha Brown. That one was on the Orwell Prize for Political Fiction, and it's a tiny little book, but it is so impactful for such a short read. And then I've got quite a few from 2021. I'll just quickly mention them. I've got Case Study by Graham McRae Burnett, which was such a unique kind of story, and I was just sitting there guessing and just wondering what was real and what wasn't real, and it was such a great read. And also Everyone Dies Famous in a Small Town by Bonnie Sue Hitchcock. Absolutely love that book. It's kind of a series of short stories that all ties together, and it's so beautifully written. So moving into the year of 2020, which is the year in which I started my YouTube channel. So I've got quite a few books published in this year too. Some of the best are The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams. I love that book. It was definitely a book. If you like words and if you like linguistics, then I think you'll really enjoy it. And it's such a good book. It's a historical fiction book about a lexicographer and his daughter who collects words throughout her life, and it's so lovely. And then also The Good Sister by Sally Hepworth, which is kind of a psychological thriller mystery kind of novel, and it's brilliant. The characters are brilliant. It's my favourite Sally Hepworth book. It's so good. So moving into 2019, I have Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I love that story. It was so good. It made me so emotional. It made me cry. I loved it. Moving into 2018, I have Three Things About Elsie by Joanna Cannon. That's another one that made me cry. It's a beautiful cover too. It's got Battenbergs on the front, and it was such a lovely story about this elderly woman, and it was so lovely, and it made me cry, and I absolutely loved it. So in 2017, I have The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which is brilliant. Another Taylor Jenkins Reid book. Another Taylor Jenkins Reid book that made me cry. So many, quite a lot of these books perhaps are going to have made me cry, because that's how I know that I really enjoyed it sometimes, and it was very impactful. So yeah, brilliant book. Also in 2017 is How to Stop Time by Matt Haig. I love that book. It's one of my favourite science fiction books of all time. Such an interesting exploration of kind of time and time travel. It's so good. So moving into 2016, I have another Taylor Jenkins Reid book, which isn't going to be surprising anyone at this point. It is One True Loves, and again, this also made me cry. It's one of her older ones. Obviously it's published in 2016, and it's about different forms of love and how you can be in love with more than one person at a time, in certain situations. I don't want to say too much about it. It's very, very good. And the next one from 2016, which I absolutely love, is The Trouble with Goats and Sheep, also by Joanna Cannon, the author of Three Things About Elsie. So it's a lovely little story about two little girls and they're kind of trying to discover Jesus. I'm not even going to get into it because this is going to go on forever. It's a really good book. It's very sweet. It's quite dark at times. It's beautifully written. So going into 2015, I have The Life and Death of Sophie Stark by Anna North. Another one of my favourite books of all time. It's kind of a contemporary fiction, literary fiction book. And it's about a woman called Sophie Stark. And we never see her actual perspective, but we see the perspective of lots of different people in her life. So some of her family members, some of her lovers, and it's really well done and very impactful, and that also made me cry. And also that year, I've got Golden Sun, which is the second book in the Red Rising series, and I think that's probably, out of the more recent books, one of my favourite science fiction series. So that one's a good one. And then moving into 2014, I have Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, like an infamous post-apocalyptic pandemic novel. Brilliant book, really, really enjoyed it. And also, similar themes, similar genre, we have The Book of the Unnamed Midwife by Meg Ellison. And that one, another post-apocalyptic novel. And this one is a lot darker, very dark, very bleak, just very hard-hitting. I'd say Station 11 was a lot more poetic and kind of beautiful and looking at the more philosophical side and how people are trying to enjoy and appreciate art and culture and, you know, music and theatre and plays. And then The Book of the Unnamed Midwife is just dark, just dark, to be honest. And then, okay, we're moving into 2013. So I have The Circle, which I really enjoyed. And then also The Fifth Wave. So I'm getting towards some more kind of young adult stuff from this kind of era. And I really enjoyed The Fifth Wave at the time. It was definitely one of my favourites at the time. I don't know how well it's kind of stood up over time, but at the time, I really enjoyed it. And then moving into 2012, brilliant book, Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. And this is probably one of the best kind of psychological thrillers I've ever read. And I hope it stands up to the test of time because it was so, so good. I must have read it 2 or 3 times now. Every time I think it's wonderful. Obviously, none of the reads was going to be as good as the first one because I was so shocked. so shocked. It was so well written. I just thought it was absolutely fantastic. I have also got from 2012 Defending Jacob, which is another really good thriller book. Really enjoyed it. Very dark, very interesting. And then moving into 2011, I have When God Was a Rabbit by Sarah Winman. And this is kind of a lovely book in the same kind of vein as The Trouble with Goats and Sheep and Three Things About Elsie, but also it has a lot of darkness to it too. So it's got a lot of kind of undercurrent of darkness. And now, 2010, I have The Passage by Justin Cronin, which I really enjoyed. And that's actually the first video I ever put on YouTube, was my book review of that video, and really enjoyed it at the time. I actually haven't continued on with that series, even though I own them all. But I enjoyed it a lot. And then we have Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins, which is obviously the third book in the Hunger Games trilogy. They used to be some of my favourite books of all time. I absolutely loved them when I was younger. And then moving into 2009, I have Catching Fire, obviously by Suzanne Collins too, which is the second book in the Hunger Games. And this is also where we get towards my heavy focus on crime fiction. So when I was a lot younger, I would exclusively read crime fiction. So I've got a lot of crime fiction. And then I kind of discovered crime fiction before I discovered young adult as well, which is unusual, probably. So I read a lot of crime fiction, and then I kind of moved into young adult kind of science fiction and young adult kind of just young adult fiction, and then moved on into other things as well. So we're going to get a little bit young adult heavy and a little bit crime fiction heavy. And I would say from here onwards, some of these books aren't some of my favourites. They're just kind of books that I've read in that year. So where were we? We were up to 2009. I have got Catching Fire, which I just told you, and I also have Nine Dragons by Michael Connelly. So there's going to be a lot of Michael Connelly here. I've read so many of his books. A couple of dozen is maybe not that many, a good 15 to 20 of his novels, I would say. I haven't read the more recent ones because I've kind of fallen out of love with crime fiction. There's other genres I'm more interested in, but at the time I've read a lot of them. So I'll try and whiz through this so it's not too boring. So yes, Nine Dragons, which is the 14th book in the Harry Bosch series. And then in 2008, I have The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. Obviously, I love that book so much. And also I have The Brass Verdict, which is also by Michael Connelly, which is the second book in the Lincoln Lawyer series. And then in 2007, I have The Overlook, another Michael Connelly book, Harry Bosch, number 13. And then in 2006, I have another Harry Bosch book. It's Harry Bosch 12 and it's Echo Park. And I really enjoyed all of these books at the time. I'm not sure if they've aged well or not, but I was a lot younger when I read them and I remember really enjoying them for the crime aspect and the police procedural and trying to uncover what happened. And the main character, Harry Bosch, was a very kind of stereotypical police detective in these series, but I just really, really enjoyed them at the time. So that one was Echo Park. Now, the other book in 2006, which is brilliant, is The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield, and it's such a good book. It's similar kind of vibes as The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, I would say, in the sense that it's about someone who has asked somebody else to write about their life at the end of their life. So similar kind of themes, I would say. And then the next one, 2005, is The Lincoln Lawyer by Harry Bosch. By Michael Connelly, not by Harry Bosch, he's the character. And that was the first book in the Lincoln Lawyer series. So all of the Harry Bosch books are kind of police procedural, police detective books. And then The Lincoln Lawyer is like a legal one. It's his, I won't tell you the connection just in case that's a spoiler, but we follow a different character called Mickey Haller. Also in 2005, Uglies, which was a young adult series that I really enjoyed at the time. I don't know if that's going to have held up to the test of time. Then in 2004, I have The Narrows, which is Harry Bosch 10, also by Michael Connelly. And then in 2003, I have Lost Light, which is Harry Bosch 9. There's a theme here. Then in 2002, I have City of Bones, which is Harry Bosch 8, all by Michael Connelly. And then in 2001, this is one of my favourite books. So if you would have asked me the question, what's your favourite book, when I was a lot younger, it would have been Life of Pi by Jan Martel. I absolutely love that book. It's so, so lovely. And it's kind of always going to have a special place in my heart. I know my mum bought me that book and I just absolutely fell in love with it. I just thought it was absolutely wonderful. And then when the movie adaptation came out, we went to the cinema to see it as a family and I really enjoyed it. It's a brilliant story. The movie's really good too. The book's really good. And actually, we're going to go and see The Life of Pi at the theatre in December. So hopefully that will be good too. So in the year 2000, I have A Darkness More Than Night, also by Michael Connelly. That's Harry Bosch number 7. And then in 1999, I have Angel's Flight, which is Harry Bosch number 6, also by Michael Connelly. And then in 1998, I have Bloodwork, which is my favourite Michael Connelly book of all time. I absolutely love that book. And then in 1997, I have Trunk Music, which is Harry Bosch 5, also by Michael Connelly. Then in 1996, I have The Poet, which is the first book in the James McAvoy one, and he is a journalist. Really, really good book. Very, very dark. Then in 1995, I have another Harry Bosch book, of course. It's Harry Bosch number 7. It's The Last Coyote. But I also have I Who Have Never Known Men, which I read this year, and it's such a good book. I read it because of Emily over at Books with Emily Fox, and it's such a great science fiction novel. Really, really enjoyed it. Just a brilliant book. And then in 1994, I have The Concrete Blonde, which is Harry Bosch number 3 by Michael Connelly. In 1993, I have The Black Ice, which is Harry Bosch number 2 by Michael Connelly. And then in 1992, the year of my birth, we have The Black Echo, which is the first book in the Harry Bosch series, which I never knew. I never knew that my favourite kind of crime fiction series growing up literally started in the year that I was born. Interesting fact. So yes, I have read a book for every single year in my life, which is interesting. I thought that once I hit 18, I'd be pretty okay with reading a book in every single year of my life. But I thought prior to the age of about 18, I might struggle a little bit, especially heading back to the early 90s. I was thinking, I'm not sure if I have read any books from the early 90s. I have relied heavily on the Harry Bosch series by Michael Connolly. But honestly, I spent years of my life just reading that series and other different crime fiction series. So yeah, interesting to look back as well over the course of my whole life, 31 years, and see all the different books that were published in all the different years, because it's not an exercise I've ever particularly done before. I've never really looked back over the course of my life at all the different books that were published at different ages. And yeah, really interesting that the Michael Connolly series was first published when I was born, and then obviously I've read so many of them. And it's nice to see as well how my taste changes, even that I'm not necessarily reading these books in year of publication, of course, because I was obviously not reading any of the Harry Bosch books when I was absolutely tiny. I was probably started reading them when I was about 10 or 11, which might have been a little bit too young, to be fair, because there were some quite dark themes in them. But yeah, at the age of about 11 or so, I started really getting quite heavy into the crime fiction series. So yeah, and then obviously I kind of went through a bit of a young adult phase, and then more recently there was a lot of thrillers. There was a lot of psychological thrillers and thrillers for a long time. It was kind of my main genre. I moved from crime fiction into young adult fiction and young adult science fiction, and then I moved kind of more into kind of science fiction, and no, I moved heavily into thrillers, heavily into psychological thrillers, and then more recently I've moved into kind of like science fiction, literary fiction, kind of contemporary fiction, a little bit of historical fiction. So yeah, interesting to see the evolution of my reading as well. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you have read any of these books, then I would love to know if you enjoyed them or not, if you've read any of the kind of older books, newer books. For all of the books that I've read since I started my YouTube channel, I will link my book review videos for those, just in case I mentioned one and you wanted to hear more about it. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. Please do like the video if you've liked it, and please do subscribe if you'd like to hear more of me talking about books. I'll see you in your next one.